I don't exactly know where to begin, but I suppose this all really started before I was even born. My birth itself set into motion a series of actions that led to a threat on my life completely beyond my control. So, pre my existence, my mother Jane dated this older guy named James when she was in her mid-teens or so. He adored her but wasn't of the same religion as her, so she ended up marrying a gentleman from her congregation instead, leaving James rather put out about this. A year after being married, she birthed me and decided she was unhappy with my father Dave. She contacted James with the intent to return to him, so Jane packed a bag one night, took me with her, and left. As soon as she arrived at James's, she was bombarded with messages from Dave, telling her he would take full custody of me if she didn't return. So, with a heavy heart, she chose me over James, and therein lies my problem. She went back to my father, and after another year of failed attempts, they finally divorced. My mother moved south to be with family, basically completely forgetting about James altogether. My childhood from then on was fairly normal, for the next 13 years or so. We'd have a few house moves, a new stepdad, a few siblings. My mother's second marriage fell through as well, and now she was single once again. The year was now 2010, and she had just discovered Facebook. Being newly single and suddenly having contact with all of her high school friends, she quickly struck up a few romances out of old nostalgia. Of course, nothing stuck though, until she once again found him. James had a Facebook account as well. Not particularly active and no profile picture at all, but my mom was sure it was him, and almost immediately fell in love with him again. He came down south and met us kids, and stayed for my 16th birthday party. Looks-wise, he was easily in his 50s now, with shaved gray hair, balding on top, glasses, and this creepy-ass grin. All things considered though, so far he was not too bad. So why am I even posting this here? How does this involve me in any way, and not wanting to meet this guy ever again? Well, when my mom left him a third time, he flipped out, and the craziness came out to play. He began to turn up at the house uninvited. He was of course told to leave every time. As the visits started to become less frequent, we started to think that maybe he'd gotten the message. But then hand-delivered letters started arriving from my mom, and it's the contents of these letters that caused the alarm. In them, he detailed how if she had never met my father, they could have been happy together. He had a plan to get her back, which was ruined by the untimely arrival of me. So, of course, he did what any crazy man would do in this situation. Started plotting to get me out of the picture. After all, I'm the reason she went back to my father, weren't I? Back in 1995, she had a near miss of a car accident with baby me in the car when a car clipped her at a junction. She hadn't gotten the car's details at the time. She just put it down to bad luck. In the letters, though, James told her that that accident 15 years ago was no accident at all. It was him, and he would not miss this time. He told her that he believed that there was still a chance for them, but only if I was taken out of the picture. Of course, I'm not a baby anymore, and my father was well and truly out of the picture at this point. But the crazy in James's brain just wouldn't let him go. The next letter informed my mother he had told social services that she was a drunk and they were coming to take me away. Not hard to prove that false though, so we didn't panic very much. The next one though told her he was going to burn the house down with us in it. If he couldn't have her, then no one else would. This one she took to the police. Upon further investigation, it was revealed that an ex of James with the same first name as my mother had a restraining order against him for stalking and attempted arson as well. Once we found this out, we were put on high alert, and the process for a restraining order was swiftly begun. Only a few nights later, my mom heard someone outside the house. Thinking it was him, she called the police. They arrived within 5 minutes and searched the entire street. No James, but his car was found behind the resident garages. He didn't return to it that night either. The next day, the police contacted a women's hostel in a neighboring county. They had a room to spare, so we packed our bags and headed there instead. And so, that summer of my life was spent in hiding, with no friends and no social media. Well, I wasn't supposed to have social media, but using proxy servers on the computer in the teens' rec room was easy. I was the only teen in the hostel at this time. It was also very stupid. James immediately began messaging me through my Facebook, playing nice, telling me how much he loved my mom and needed to know she was okay. I ignored him and blocked his account. After this, I had a number of fake accounts try to befriend me. They were all blocked also. After 3 months, they found us a new house. We had a week to go back and pack up our old lives. So, that's what we did. And now 8 years later, I've moved several times since. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten and hadn't given much thought to the man who wanted to kill me so badly just so he could be with my mother. 2 years ago, I moved back up north not far from my birthplace. 2 weeks ago, I received an email on an old email account for a rental agreement. At first, I thought it was just spam, but upon opening it, the name at the top read "To James Smith," and the rental address was not too far from me. Only a single town away. That sick fuck gave my email to the renters as his, so I would know he was nearby watching me. I've heard nothing else since, but I seriously hope I don't ever encounter him again. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and got a great opportunity to take a scholarship at a school in Washington, D.C. My family doesn't come from much money, and to ship my car and fly out with all of my stuff would have cost several $1,000s. Plus, I was really afraid the airline would break my cello, which I'd gotten my scholarship for in the first place and was still making payments on. So, that wasn't the move. Instead, I decided to pack my 1991 Toyota Previa with all of my shit and hit the road on my own. I'd mapped it out so it would take 4 days if I hustled, and would cost me around $500 total with gas, eating off the dollar menu and sleeping in my car. Good stuff. Fast forward 1 whole day, and I'm already like fuck every single bit of this. I was at a pace of 16 hours a day driving, just starting my second day. There was nowhere good to sleep in my car out in the middle of nowhere that ran around I-90. The only marginally okay place I found was the parking lot of a small hospital somewhere in Missoula, Montana, I think. It felt so sketchy to be sleeping in my car on my own, though. I can't exactly put my finger on what made me feel this type of way, but the further away I got from Oregon, the more I felt like I drew the attention of people around me. I was just running off adrenaline at this point, covering nearly 800 miles a day. I'd call my parents at every rest stop and leave voicemails on the machine, updating them on where I was. Cell phones were just starting to be popular at that time. They were hella expensive, so of course I didn't have one. It was both physically and emotionally exhausting, and I was so ready to just arrive at my dorm and sleep in an actual bed again. My car wasn't super old, but it was a flood salvage and not the most reliable thing around. Around this point, random check engine lights were permanently on, and I was afraid it was going to break down and leave me stranded out here in the Badlands and barren stretches of fucking nothing. If you've never made this trip before, at least at this point in time, you needed to pack cans of gas in your trunk, because you would run out with a full tank before you hit so much as a gas station in some of these places. I remember literally driving all day through nothing but tumbleweeds, sleeping on the side of the road, waking up, and still not seeing civilization again for a total of 12 hours of driving. Fast forward to finally reaching Wyoming. I don't remember exactly where, but I think it was near South Dakota or the Nebraska border maybe. I was running low on cash at this time due to a rock slamming into my side mirror and breaking the glass. I needed to buckle down to have enough for gas. I saw this sign at this tiny church off to the side, saying free community spaghetti dinner, listed as that evening. Of course, I said, oh hell yeah, let's do this. It would still be a few hours until it started, but I figured I could at least stop by and introduce myself, maybe help set up a bit and enjoy that sweet, sweet spaghetti. Maybe they would even let me take a plate to go too. Long story short, it was pretty great. I met some really nice folks, and actually the spaghetti was really good as well. Everyone seemed so amazed at my journey. The pastor ended up asking me if I wanted to stay there for the night for free. A lady chimed in that they would absolutely find some place for me. A third person immediately piped up that they had some spare cots down in the preschool in the basement that I could use. Heck yeah. So the time rolls around, we finish cleaning up, everyone leaves the church, and I get shown to my cot. The inherent creepiness of sleeping on a cot in a dark preschool basement showed no red flags to me at all. It was absolute magic compared to the van at least. I slapped a few of them together, made a big nest out of pillows, and was able to stretch out very comfortably. I woke up at some point in the night though, to the sound of footsteps around me. It seemed like they were just kind of wandering around. I sat there frozen, holding my breath and trying to figure out what was happening. Then it hit me. I'd forgotten that night to call my dad and tell him where I was. I was sleeping on a cot in the basement of a church I actually just realized I didn't even know the name of. I didn't even know what town I was in. Nobody knew where I was. And there was a stranger wandering around near where I slept. I decided to try and sneak out of there. I quietly put my shoes on and tried to tiptoe opposite to where I thought I'd heard the person. I felt such anxiety heading into the dark stairwell. I knew there was probably an emergency exit at the end of the hall in it, and decided I would start running. All of a sudden though, I heard someone shout, "Hey!" and grab the back of my shirt hard. I felt their cold hand on the exposed skin of my back. They pulled so hard they ripped the spaghetti strap. In some Houdini move I'm not sure how I even managed to pull. I slid out of the open button-down without them being able to grab me again, and sprinted off. It was too dark to see the person or where they had come from. I didn't dare to turn around and look back. I kept running up the hill in the dark. I even lost one of my shoes and cut my foot on something hidden in the grass, but I didn't even care. I kept running with only one shoe until I got to my car. I burnt rubber through the empty parking lot. The only car around was a sedan in the pastor's driveway. I drove until the gas light came on and did not even get out to refill the tank until it was completely out. So, to the person who grabbed me in the middle of the night in that dark church, for fuck knows what reason, I hope we never meet again. These events took place over a couple of months. It still haunts me to this day, and is a lot of the reason why I am the way I am. A little bit of backstory. I have 5 siblings, so there are 6 of us in total. This happened when my oldest brother was 14, so I would have been 3 at the time, given we're 11 years apart. I'm the baby of the family. This happened at a very fragile time in my parents' marriage. My dad definitely was not the best father, and had cheated on my mother a number of times. For the record, I've asked my siblings to write this since they were older, but no one has, so I'll just recount it to the best of my ability. There was so much more that happened in the end, but I'll talk about 3 occurrences in particular that stuck with me. I remember I was eating something with my sister, watching TV with her one night with the rest of my siblings. My parents weren't home that day. We only had one car at the time, and my mom had to go pick my dad up, so they would leave us at home alone sometimes. I remember going into the kitchen to throw something away with my sister. We had this big window in there, and the garbage was right beside it. My sister suddenly screamed, and I noticed a man's face pressed up against the glass, looking in at us with a flashlight as he smiled at us. We both ran into the other room to tell the rest of my siblings. We all quickly stopped watching TV and stayed together upstairs. My mother very soon got home. We told her what happened, she flipped out, called the cops, and also told my neighbors to keep an eye out as well. This happened a number of times, and actually turned out to be multiple men. They always seemed to get away though, right before the cops would get there, or always right before my mom would arrive home. I remember at one point she even cut down the bushes in front of our house because these men would just hide in them. I also remember them breaking one of the windows in our kitchen at one point. On a separate night, I remember being alone with one of my brothers and one sister closest in age to me. They would have been about 4 and 6 respectively. I don't remember quite why we were alone, but I do remember we were very distinctly. The men came back that night and were pounding on our front door, throwing things through our windows. All 3 of us ran into my parents' room upstairs and locked the door scared. I remember crying with my sister and my brother telling us not to cry. We could pretend to be other people, brave people, so we wouldn't have to be scared anymore. It definitely worked to help us out, and my parents got home not long after. We were literally on lockdown at this point, and I was terrified of everyone. My brother told me that one night the phone rang right when my mom had left to go get my dad. He had answered it. It was one of the men who laughed and said, "You people are so fucking stupid," and then immediately hung up. One of the last nights this went on, I remember being in bed with my sister waking me up and taking me with her to the landing of our stairs. Our stairs faced our front door. My brother was sitting on the landing, pointing a shotgun at the front door, all of my siblings huddled beside him. I had no idea what was happening, or even really what a gun was, but I knew whatever was going on must be real bad. I sat down next to my siblings and not a single person talked. I remember grabbing this stupid T-Rex toy that I started playing with because I was scared. It was as if time had stood still, but there it was. The men began banging on our front door and yelling things outside. I don't know why or if the men had done this, but our front door was unlocked. It felt like forever when my brother finally spoke. All he said was, "Come in then," and pointed his shotgun at the doorway. All the sounds stopped and we waited, but no one came through the door. My parents got home soon after, and my dad actually caught one of them trying to run away and beat the crap out of him. The cops came soon after all of this and told us they had news. Apparently our phone lines were being tapped. That's how the guys always knew when we were alone at the house. I don't know if the cops knew or charged these men with anything. My mom doesn't like talking about it because she's a different person than she was 20 years ago. Now that I'm a bit older, I realize we never should have been left alone at that time, period. But my mom was seriously not well. She was madly in love with my dad and obsessed with making sure he wasn't cheating. A lot of the time that this was going on, she wasn't picking him up. She was watching him at work and making sure he wasn't cheating, all while leaving the 6 of us alone to fend for ourselves. I realize how insanely selfish this is, but I've since forgiven my mom for it. She's still with my dad after all this time, and I'm working on a better relationship with both of them. Looking back, it almost doesn't even feel real. After all, we found out all of this happened from a psycho bitch my dad had cheated with, who got her loser middle-aged guy friends to terrorize a bunch of children. For the record, I found this woman and sent her the nastiest message a few years ago when I turned 19. This stuff keeps me up at night. I'm hyper alert to sounds and extremely paranoid at night, especially when I'm all alone. Those pieces of shit impacted my life in a way they'll never even know. But through it all, me and my siblings have all remained really close, and my brother is a super badass for stepping up and caring for us the way he did. He still tries to this day to be our protector, even though all of us have grown up. I now realize what's most important is that none of us were hurt, because it could have gone so terribly wrong in so many ways. I wonder if that guy would have come in, and I wonder what these loser guys are doing now, that they must be in their 50s. Regardless, I hope I never meet them again, because I may just kill them if I ever do. I'm a 28-year-old female from Germany. Northern Germany is a safe place to raise your kids generally. Murders, kidnappings, shootings, all of that kind of stuff is not very common here, not even in the big cities. I'm not exactly the most girly type. Actually, I don't seem very feminine at all, really. Short hair, wear lots of hoodies, shorts, and piercings, always with no makeup. It's just not sort of my thing. I like to consider myself rather tough. I know I can put out a pretty strong fist, despite my MS. Normally, I try to avoid stress though, and I really hate getting into fights. My friends all call me a goofy and gentle softie. It takes some pretty serious stuff to make me get really angry. But there's one thing that always changes me from a doe to a female grizzly protecting her cubs. When I think about what happened several weeks ago, my whole body starts shaking with rage. I had made a new friend on Saturday. Let's call him Andrew. Speaking of small cubs, Andrew is 10 years old. He's a very nice boy. I actually came to know him while playing the new Pokemon Go game. We had a lot of fun together catching various Pokemon. My battery went low after about 2 hours though, so we decided to part ways at that point. I had gone on catching tours nearly every day since I got this app. Before that, I rarely ever left the house. Back then, I didn't really know why, but I thought about my meeting with Andrew. I guess I was curious about if I would ever see him again on my Pokemon tours. So, this one Friday, I decided to do a second run through my neighborhood. It was about 1800 or so. Just gonna hit some Pokestops and go home after, I told myself, and left the house. As I turned the corner though, not 500 meters away from the place where Andrew and I first met, I saw him once again. I smiled to myself and started to go the same route as he was, to say hi to him and maybe surprise him. After taking a few steps forward though, I could see a hooded man peeking out of a side street behind him a few times. My eyes focused, and I watched very intently. My smile quickly turned into a frown as I realized he was intently watching Andrew. My inner alarms were going off when the guy began to follow him in a careful but very steady pace. He would stop whenever Andrew stopped. He would hide if he looked back. A part of me still couldn't believe this was actually happening right in front of my eyes. We were in Germany after all. So I decided to follow them as well. Andrew hadn't seemed to have noticed the guy yet, and both of them didn't seem to have noticed me at any point at all. I saw the man begin to quicken his pace to catch up with Andrew. He grabbed him by the arm and put his hand over his mouth to shut down his screams. He began to drag him towards some bushes. I froze in that moment. I could feel my heart dropping. Then I ran like hell. I threw my phone away and sprinted. I started to roar and swear as loud as I could. The man who was grabbing Andrew turned around startled. I still don't know how my ill body managed it, but as soon as I got close enough, I lost it. I tore Andrew away, unfortunately maybe a bit too harshly. Sorry, buddy. He fell to the ground, and I hurled myself at this creature. He was much bigger than I was, in his mid-30s possibly. I had never felt this kind of adrenaline in my whole life though. I was really scared, but more than anything, I was extremely furious. I screamed out for someone to call the police several times, hoping someone would hear me. The man seemed like he had hit a gym every once in a while. I didn't care though. I began wildly swinging and punching at him and pushing him as well, hitting his nose until it was bloody. I have no idea how I even managed that. Maybe he just didn't expect such a small woman to go crazy. I began to kick the shit out of him when he fell to the ground, screaming and stomping on him until my strength left me. When he finally got back to his feet, he glared at me, growling stuff like, "Stupid cunt," and "I'll make sure you regret this." He drew some kind of hunting knife, a large one. I thought this was it for me. I thought he was going to stab me. I really thought I was going to die here, but I didn't move. I stared at him and started hysterically screaming at him. Suddenly, he began to bolt, as residents of that neighborhood started to emerge from their houses. I dropped to the ground. I wanted to chase after him, but my condition would not allow any further action. I just sat there shaking and started to cry. I looked around to see if I could see Andrew. Thankfully, he had gotten a safe distance away and watched the whole thing, clearly just as in shock as I was. When the police came, we told them all about what happened. After that, I gave Andrew my contacts so we could keep in touch. The police drove him home and he insisted they let me come as well. The whole time he wouldn't let go of my arm and cried so hard I could barely fight my own tears back. His parents thanked me 1,000 times for saving their child. The police called me in the next day to do a full report. They informed me this bastard was wanted for several sexual assaults on young women and children. He's even still on the run to this day. I have to thank that this app existed in the first place. I don't dare to imagine what might have happened if I hadn't gone out a second time that day to catch Pokemon. My phone didn't survive the fall, unfortunately. But more importantly, Andrew is still healthy and safe around his family. I'd break 1,000 smartphones to defend a child from danger. And to all those pedophiles out there stalking in the night, pray that we'll never meet, because I'll rip your dick off with a rusty wire and feed it to the street rats as you die. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for reaching this far, especially if you made it to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any thoughts about what I could be doing better, or you have any thoughts about the stories in the video itself, or anything like that, please be sure to leave a comment in the comments section below the video. I always enjoy reading all of your guys' comments, even if I can't always respond to them all the time. If you guys would like to have your own story read in a video one day, please be sure to take a look in the description below the video. You will find links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I will try to read your story as soon as possible. You can also send it directly to me at my email of bluespookyreadings@gmail.com. If you do decide to send in a story, please make sure to include proper grammar and formatting if you can, as well as including as much detail as you feel comfortable with sharing. This will give your story the most chance of appearing in a future video. Also, please be sure to put in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, the type of story it is if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Overall, guys, I think that's pretty much it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.